Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov with Chelle Law, and we assist parents, guardians, and students who may be having issues surrounding special education or specifically 504 plans in relation to public school systems or charter school systems. In this video, I'm answering the question, who qualifies for a 504 plan? So 504 plan is actually rooted in federal statutes, specifically the Rehabilitation Act, Section 504. So in that act, and specifically the 504 section, it gives protections for people or students with disabilities and protects them from being discriminated against. So what does this look like in practice? Schools are required by federal law to provide accommodations for students with disabilities. And we're going to kind of go through what qualifies a disability for a 504 plan. But again, the 504 plan will then protect that individual with that disability from being discriminated against by providing them with accommodations within the education institution. So who qualifies? Well, first we can start by age. So federal law is it's typically from ages 3 up until age 21 or 22 whenever the student would leave the secondary education. State law may change this a little, it may add to it. I can't take away from that. So ages 3 to 21 or 22 if they're still in the secondary education or preschool education. Now, college students are protected under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. However, at the college or university level, that student would be allowed accommodations if they technically qualify, but normally the school has their own type of accommodation plan. It wouldn't be called a 504 plan. And just because you have a 504 plan for your secondary education, it will not directly transfer over to the college or university setting. So you'll have to be qualified again at that level. And again, it's called something different typically than a 504 plan, but you still get your accommodations under that section of federal law. So who qualifies? So we've discussed age, so it can really vary from ages 3 and up, basically. But what do you have to have? I've said the word disability in this video, but how is that defined? So federal statutes define a student would have a qualifying disability like inside the classroom. So this could really be anything, any type of diagnosis or disability that a healthcare provider has established with that student. They would then have that type of disability. However, there's a second part to it. It has to impair the student. So if the student has a disability, maybe a physical disability, maybe something, I'm trying to think here, something with their hands or something, but they can still write. There's no major impact on their life activities. So therefore, just because they have a physical disability, they would not qualify. So to kind of sum that up, you have to have a disability, and that disability has to impact your life in some way within the educational facility. And so you need those accommodations so that that child is not discriminated against. So let me give you a couple of examples. Again, it can be physical or mental. I would say it's really 50-50 from the clients that I have seen. If a student has, example, an anxiety disorder, that could affect them within the classroom, a major life activity. So they would then qualify likely for a 504 plan, and they would receive accommodations. Maybe they can leave the classroom and go to a safe place if they're feeling anxious. They get more time on a test or an exam, or an aide is with them to read their exam. Those are some examples, and that would be considered a mental disability. So a healthcare provider has given them a diagnosis, a mental disability of anxiety, some type of anxiety disorder. It impairs them in the classroom, that major life activity, and therefore they get accommodations under a 504 plan. The thing with a 504 plan that sometimes gets misconstrued, it sometimes gets mixed up with the qualifications of an IEP. An IEP is also rooted in federal law, and a student must have a disability to have an IEP. But an IEP has a requirement that a student must have a disability that fits within one of the 13 categories. A 504 plan does not have any type of categories, so they could literally have any type of disability. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to fit in any of the categories. The legal language is that it has to impair substantially limit a major life activity. So this would be within the classroom. So let's talk about that. So we've kind of discussed a mental disability. Also, there's physical disabilities as well. If a student can't walk and they're in a wheelchair, they may need accommodations within that classroom, more space to, sit and enter and leave the classroom. They also may need an aid to assist them with transitions between classrooms, things like that. Again, these accommodations are just simple things in the classroom. Some people also get misconstrued and think that in order to qualify for a 504 plan, that a student has to have some type of a learning disability or they need pulled out for special education. And that's not really the case. That's almost more of an IEP. A 504 does not mean that your child qualifies for special education. Now they can, that's separate. However, a 504 plan is just for anybody in the general education classroom or in the special education classroom. It's a very it's a very broad scope of who qualifies for a 504. And also what type of accommodations. So basically, if your student has a disability and needs any type of accommodations because they have limitations within the classroom, they would likely qualify for a 504 plan. Now, 504 plans don't really have an expiration date. Again, this is sort of misconstrued with an IEP. IEPs are good for 3 years and they have to meet every year. Now, typically at a 3-year period, a 504 plan will be reevaluated to see if the student remains qualified for those accommodations. Another thing to remember though is if the student had some type of injury that qualified them for a 504 plan, but later that injury healed itself or it's no longer affecting any major life activities within the classroom, then the student would then lose the 504 accommodations because they no longer qualify. They no longer have that disability. So if you're concerned if your child will qualify for a 504 plan, the first thing you want to do is speak to your healthcare providers and see if there's any type of diagnosis for your student or your child. At that point, then you can reach out to the school and discuss with them and maybe request an evaluation or a meeting with your 504 coordinator to see if that student's disability rises to the level where they would need accommodations and qualify for the 504 plan. If you have any questions or you'd like more information, you can check out our website, which is in the description below. And we are happy to help if you need a consultation to know your rights. If your child qualifies for a 504, we're here to help. Thanks.